Hello and welcome to another episode of the Northern Fire podcast. Today, myself, Sean Parry and Brock Dillon are going to be talking to Ed Gamester about Ed things. Ed is the founder of something called The Guild and Ghost Squad, amongst other things. And he's, all in all, just a very interesting guy and has a lot of very interesting things to say. So we're just going to quiz him on some of these things and ramble a little bit. I hope you enjoy it. Ed Gamester, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to see the faces of human beings in these trying times.
Yeah. So how are you doing with your Mad Max costume so far in the post-apocalyptic world?
Fortunately, I've been living in rags for pretty much the last 19 years. Not by choice, just by laziness. And I realized recently I don't own any clothing at all that I've purchased. It's all been given to me, or I found it, or have stolen it. And so I sort of have a bit of a Mad Max vibe going on anyway, just because I look like I am homeless, or have survived a less dramatic apocalypse.
Well, it's very green of you.
Yeah, I was about to say, eco-warrior.
I'm actually carbon negative. Like, it's not just that my clothes cost no carbon to create, I actually give carbon back by burying them and growing trees out of their nutrients.
Is it a case that at night time though they do suck in oxygen and then like return it again in the day?
Yeah, they're wily like that. Depends how much fungus and mold is on them, really. That's why you should never wash your clothes. If you get a decent fungus growth on them, that'll really pump out some O2.
Well, yeah, I mean, like a sloth.
Yeah, human sloth.
The human sloth, yeah. That's what I'm going for.
If you're going to say anyone is like a human sloth, it's definitely not going to be you.
Oh.
But in reverse.
There's an element of majesty to the sloth. I like to think that they actually can move really fast and they just choose not to.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, there's like two families of sloth. There's the three-toed sloth and the two-toed sloth. And both of these families, like, evolved to hang from trees separately. They're not related in their tree hanging ability. They both evolved that separately. How weird is that?
That's fucking cool.
In different parts of the world as well.
Well, they're both in South America, but do you know, like, so there used to be swimming sloths and giant ground sloths and cave sloths and all sorts of different types of sloths, and those the two that we have now both hang from trees, and they're both like evolved that separately from other sloths.
Did it turn out that being incredibly slow just wasn't a good evolutionary trait for anything other than hanging from trees, and that's why they all...
that is pretty much
the giant sloth that's just the biggest possible target and can't run away, and weirdly enough didn't live very long. Because just dozens of saber-toothed tigers descended on it. What a terrible... How did it even get that far into evolution?
I heard that, like, was it the giant sloth, or one of the types of giant sloth, used to eat lots of avocados. And then we killed them all, and the avocados nearly went extinct, but then we saved the avocados.
I have heard that, yeah.
I don't hope it's true, but I like to think that there's something in it, and I haven't just taken that in for no reason.
We are taking up the mantle of the giant ground sloths.
Yeah, and now we're having wars over the avocados.
Oh no. But I'd like to hear more about Ed.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're really fucking... Ed, do you want to hear more about sloths, or do you want to tell us about yourself?
I mean, I already know pretty much everything there is to know about me, whereas I know very little about sloths, three-toed, two-toed, tree or ground-dwelling, or sea-dwelling,
fucking cool.
Or otherwise. So if we could make a side podcast called the Slothcast...
Wait, but I'm really sorry, Ed. Before we go on, can you tell us about the swimming sloths?
Yeah, so they would just live in the sea, like they were sort of seashore sloths, and they would dive. You kind of know, like manatees and dugongs. They're quite slow, but they like sea grass and stuff like that. I think the giant sloths that lived in the sea were pretty similar.
Eating the sea avocados.
Yeah, if that were a thing, yeah.
In what way would they sloth? I don't really know what makes a sloth if it's not the things that hang from trees. What are they, not just bears or something?
So it's just a family of animals. They're from I forget the word for them, but they're from a specific family that's sort of not related to like rodents, marsupials, or like cats and dogs and that. So
right.
they're in a very different sort of family tree to the rest of animals. Yeah,
and they're just terrible because all of them died off.
It's time to shut up about sloths.
Yeah. Well, okay then, get into the actual point now. So, Ed, I'm gonna say before I let you let rip, I'm gonna list off some things. Almost like that whole ancient idea that if I guess your true names, then it's gonna reveal more magic or something like that. So I don't know what
I'm so sorry. You broke up a little bit there, and all I heard was magic name.
I'm sat right here, and it didn't make any more sense.
That's all you need to hear. All right, so some things that I have witnessed with my own eyes. You do. I've seen you jump off high things and collide with humans. I've seen you lift things that should not be lifted by humans. You've eaten Subway sandwiches that no one should be able to intake in one go.
Like a Scooby-Doo character.
Yeah.
These are just some of my deeds. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I'm beating about the bush. So tell us about some of the things that you do.
Well, I mean, I think you've hit on the main ones: the Subway sandwiches. I'm asked this question with a fair degree of frequency, and yet I'm still incapable of really answering it in any way that isn't just a sort of a mumbling burble of incoherence. I sort of just roam around more or less doing whatever I want to do, but the things that I want to do tend to take on a bit of a theme. They're sort of, I want to define them as ostentatious acts of daring and bravado. Like anything that adds a bit of colour and spice to my life or the lives of people around me tends to get my attention. And yeah, often that involves leaping off of something or lifting something up. So I'm a competitive strongman, or I was back when that was something you could do. And I'm a professional wrestler in the show style of wrestling, or I was back when that was something you could do. I do physical daring stunts for TV shows and movies and live shows, or I did again back when that was something you could do. Most of my things have been destroyed this year, which is why I have all this delightful free time.
Yeah.
But the main reason that I do any of that crap normally is to entertain myself and the people around me that I care about. I feel that there is a strange lack of crazy bravado style acrobatics and things in people's lives. I don't really know what I'm on about. I guess I'm like a living song. It's sort of entertaining to dip into, but no one would really want to be listening to that song all the time, right? But unfortunately, I am. I can't get out of the song. The song is I am the song. I think that's probably the worst description of myself I've ever given when asked, but that's the one I'm going to stick with.
No, man, you're lovely to be around. We wouldn't be having this conversation otherwise.
Oh.
I think if our lives were a song, right now would be the bridge that is just totally different to the rest of the song. Nobody wants to listen to it, but it's in the song.
Yeah.
And you've just got to get through it to get to the next chorus.
Yeah.
I fucking hope so.
It's the bridge, isn't it? We're currently in the bridge of the Song of Life, where no one really bothered writing any lyrics, but they just agreed it needed to be in there for the general blueprint of what they have planned. And we all know
the Beatles did it.
When the chorus comes back in, it's going to have gone up a little bit. There'll be a key change coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, nothing. Everything
Yeah.
will be exactly the same as it was before, and we'll all wonder what we missed out on. Yeah.
Is the key change going to be the next financial crash?
Potentially, it will turn to. It won't just be a key change. It'll actually go entirely into a minor key. For 8 years.
Fucking love minors in music, though. That's always good.
Who doesn't love a good minor?
Yeah. Well,
Don't take that out of context, by the way. I'm trusting you with my voice here.
Yeah, we'll fucking try. So, as well as stuntman doubles and professional wrestling and some of those things, you also. I will just before I get to the point I'm going to make is you also do music. Can you hear us?
No, sorry, you disappeared. You said I also did something and then disappeared.
So you also do music as well?
Ah, yes, I have been known to do a vague semblance of music. I have a two-piece band called Gay Bum, and basically, we're not really musicians. We're performers. So everything that I do is a performance, and in the case of Gay Bum, the performance is a musical performance. There are songs and lyrics, and people sing along, and that's very enjoyable. And I cavort on a stage. And then, in wrestling, it's the same thing. I'm just performing, but it involves punching people in the head. And then if I take to writing down, I do the same thing. I just perform and then write down what I'm thinking and doing instead. So everything I do is basically just the same thing, which is and this is difficult to describe. People say I'm a creative person, and I don't believe I am a creative person. I've never been aware of sitting down and creating anything. I simply engage in whatever it is I'm doing, whether that's on a stage or in front of a laptop or whatever, and I sort of just see what is going on out there, up in my head, and I just report it. I'm not aware of creating anything. If I'm on stage, I just open my mouth and whatever I'm thinking comes out. If I'm writing, I just open my imagination, and whatever is up there gets written down into books that poor people buy and read. And if I'm in any sort of improvised theatre or wrestling thing, it's the same thing. I'm not creating anything. I'm just expressing what I see and feel in the moment. Which is what I think I've always been a bit weird when people say I'm creative or I'm a writer or I'm a musician or anything, because I never feel like I earnestly or honestly am any of those things. I'm just a guy I'm fairly in tune with what I'm feeling and experiencing, and I'm quite good at mirroring that back and expressing that to other people in a way that lets them feel and experience the same thing that I'm experiencing. So I'm more of just like a conduit for joy, hopefully joy a lot of the time. Sometimes I'm sure sadness if I wrote a sad song, but I tend not to do that. I just try and feel whatever the happiness of the universe and then project that into other people if I can.
Yeah, that's pretty wonderful. It's actually a very interesting topic. That was something seriously that I did want to talk to you about, and not just sloths and Subway sandwiches. The whole idea that so obviously you say that you are not a creative person, but there is a large element of the fact that you do things, and obviously me and Brock, we are artists as well. Or, that's the word that we.
I try.
But the biggest part of it is actually just daring to do something and doing it, and not just overthinking something to the point where you're crippled on the spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are all doers of things, and doers of things seem to be increasingly rare these days, because with modern technology and social media, you can very much look like you're a doer of things without doing anything. Whereas not too long ago in human history, if you didn't do things, that was very obvious. Whereas now I honestly believe that people can spend their whole life doing nothing, but just making themselves look like they do something. Making yourself look like you do something takes more effort than doing things half the time, but people do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking about doing things and actions and deeds. So tell us about Thus and the Guild.
The Guild, yes. Again, people ask me what is the Guild, or ask me to talk about the Guild with shocking regularity, and and yet I still don't know how to explain what it is, let alone how I came up with it or anything else. The Guild is essentially a commitment to the authenticity of yourself, which I believe is obviously not something I came up with. It's something that has floated around in various forms of existential literature and continental philosophy for hundreds of years, but seems to, especially again in this day and age, seems to have died a little bit off, where it's easier than ever to pretend to be something that you're not, or to dedicate your life to the fabrication of an identity is now easier than ever. And about 11, 12 years ago or so, I got very depressed and unhappy with my own life and the life I saw around me, which was essentially people living lives they weren't happy with, but yet having to pretend that they were happy with them for the sake of seeming to be successful and not doing anything, and just having the same repetitive experiences over and over again, which seemed to be the very opposite of what being alive should be about. I found that my standard mood and approach to life was just apathetic and indifferent to everything. And it dawned on me one day that if there's one thing you should not be whilst alive as a sentient human being, is apathetic or indifferent, because there's a shitload going on out there, and there should be a shitload going on inside you. And if there isn't, then what the hell? Life, as far as I can tell, should be terrifying and exciting and thrilling and all these things all in once. Because Jesus Christ, like, as a self-reflecting piece of the universe that got spat out of a vagina by no will of its own and then had to make it up for dozens of years on end with no one guiding it, really, it should be terrifying. And, like, if anything, you should spend every moment in fear of your own demise, you know, and clawing at the walls or like digging in sand looking for anything to make sense of it. But instead, we sort of just like lugubriate and just sit down for extended periods of time. And I realized there was this mounting sense of panic that I was definitely going to die. I mean, we're all going to die, right? And having just done nothing but sit down for decades. Yeah, and so basically we're confronted with the absolute absurdity of existence and the fact that really, if anything, life should be terrifying and thrilling and not boring. I mean, how could it be boring? But yet it was, like, undeniably boring and repetitive. And so I just basically threw everything out of the window one day and was like, that is it, never. I'm never ever going to be bored again. I'm never ever going to be boring again. I couldn't work out how I'd done that, how I'd got into a situation where I'd taken the most insane thing. Like, you could this moment, you could open your window and hurl yourself out of it, hit the floor, break 15 bones, crawl into the sea, be washed up somewhere else tomorrow, like beg money from a tramp to try and get yourself to hospital, and when there, like, make best friends with the person in the bed next to you, who then wheels you around in a wheelchair for the next 2 years while you heal, at which point you make a folk band and play the tambourine using one of your working arms, right? That's doable. That could happen. If all you have to do is jump out the fucking window and you've started. So how has it got to the point where everyone just sort of, I can't even say exists. A lot of us don't exist, and the thing is, I'm not digging at other people or having a go. I'm just reporting what my life was like. And I was young, man. I was like 22 or 23 years old. Like, I had everything going for me in terms of, you know, the excitement and the newness of life. And yet even I was just chugging away doing the same old shit every single day, despite the fact that every day is a new opportunity to do insane things. Not necessarily, this is all going somewhere. So the Guild is a commitment to that authenticity and that acceptance that life is inescapably what you make of it. But that, with the reality that doesn't mean that it's going to be good. Like, it owes you fuck all, you know. It could and probably will be terrible. This is like one of the key tenets of the Guild is, like, the Guild is not a good way to live necessarily. It's just a way to live, and it's a very honest way to live. And so I've not really answered your question at all, other than to say that sort of my own values and principles, which extend to essentially authenticity and strength, in various manifestations, I call that the guild, and I love to be surrounded by other people that embody those characteristics and virtues, because I honestly believe they are the only people I could possibly enjoy hanging out with, because they are alive and they exist in a meaningful way. You can feel it when you're around these people. There's like a dent in space-time. Like there's density to their existence. Around them, things happen. Times are exciting. Not necessarily good or bad, but exciting. Whereas a lot of people, you could know them and not even realize. And so, yeah, that essentially the guild is the bringing together of people that think like I do. Or more importantly, like you said about doing things, not just people who think like I do, but people who do it. It's very easy to sit there and be like, yeah, you should live by the day, man, and then just get up and fucking do the same old shit again, right? Which is fine. I'm not saying that's the wrong way to be. I'm just saying like the guilty way to be is to, if you say a thing, go do it. Otherwise, don't say it. And if you do, then like your words are meaningless now. So I'm never going to listen to what you say again, because you've proved that you never do what you say you're going to do. So the guild is that commitment to the authenticity, but also the following through of it that makes all the difference. Because otherwise, man, why bother? So there you go. That was a vague attempt. Did that answer it in some way? Was there anything in there that you thought that's actually what I was?
Well, either way, it was wonderful.
Well,
so
thanks.
this is obviously a little bit off topic from what you were saying, but I think that the idea of honor certainly comes into it, and the idea that life isn't just about the pursuit of wealth and happiness as such, because happiness, of course, is something that's wonderful, but it's not possible to be happy all of the time, and also that life should not just be about the pursuit of wealth or whatever, because it's meaningless.
I think recognition of the absurdity is something that really helped me.
Yeah.
When I was sort of going through it, just like, it's absurd. Now I'm going to sit down and paint or something. Like, you just not stopping when you realize how rubbish life is. You're just like, oh God, it's absurd. Wouldn't it be even more absurd if I did something else to, so I really appreciate that aspect of it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, it also really helps when you realize that, about the idea of not taking yourself too seriously to the point where, again, you are crippled and you don't do anything. Like a lot of people will overthink things instead of just giving it a go.
Yeah, that's why most people have a book they want to write, or a picture they want to paint, or a project they want to get off the ground that they never will do, because all of us get paralyzed by this weird feeling that it needs to be perfect, or it needs to perfectly represent their idea of it, despite the fact that they're going to be dead pretty soon, and the thing that they create will probably have fallen in the bin or got banana spilled on it whilst making breakfast. And like, that's how life is, mate, unfortunately.
I think that's something like being a tattoo artist. You don't get to be that way, because the person you are doing the drawing for is there staring at you, judging you. And if you take too many breaks, or say like, oh, I think about this and come back to it tomorrow, you can't do that. No, you have to do it.
No, you have to get on with it.
So there, I think in that sense, like, being a tattoo artist, I don't know if you have this feeling, Sean, but like, there, I am pretty fearless, and I will just do it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when I'm at home, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Whereas you, Ed, you always, and I love your improvisational skills. They're just,
thank you.
It's just the epitome of like not having no fear and just doing the thing. I love it.
Thank you. Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the reasons why I do the improvisational stuff is because of that exact. It's a way to be fearless. It's a way of forcing me to confront the terror of not getting everything right, and then live with it when it doesn't go right. That's why I do it. So it's actually more of a reaction to the fact that naturally I overthink, I overfeel, I'm quite guarded. If I'm left to my own devices, I will just sit in a room and deeply contemplate and consider every minutiae of my life and my projects, and then not do any of it. So I realized when I was young, I was a very shy child, a very like sensitive kid, and I realized that I was never going to do anything unless I managed to just be brave and crack on. And so basically, just like you said about tattooing, everything I do is not a performance. It's very, very real, but it's me saying, right, go time, and then you switch on. Just like you sit at home and obsess about stuff, but out there on the floor, like on the stage for me or on the tattoo shop floor for you, you got no choice. You've got to switch on and make it work there and then for the sake of everybody else. Because when it comes down to it, I find, and you possibly find, that doing it for myself is never enough. Like, I know that because if left to my own devices, I'll do fuck all. Whereas if I have to go out there and do it to please somebody else or to entertain other people or because it matters to them, I'll bring the thunder and I'll make it as good as possible. So, and it's always that way. So it's always about surrounding yourself with people that you care about enough that you are constantly doing things for their sake. Because if they're not around, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to just sit in my pants, and just overthink what colour I'm going to try and paint my van. Should it be matte black or should it be matte black with red stripes? And that'll keep me up for 6 days. I won't sleep.
Always the stripes, though.
Definitely, yeah.
Obviously the stripes. I mean, it was a ludicrous example.
All right, so this is something I'm interested to hear your take on then, because, I mean, obviously, we've hung out lots of times and we've done some crazy things. Like, for instance, Jorvik Viking Festival. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are very angry about it, but we asked if we could hold torches, and we ended up marching behind the fake funeral procession, going through the whole thing, pretending that we would know what we were doing. And we did lots of stupid things in the past.
We did.
But yeah, and hopefully we will again if the world starts up again. But for me, I definitely, I have to have a lot of time where I spend not talking, not verbalizing anything or doing anything. And that's one of the things where art is wonderful for me, because I can make use of that time where I can't function competently in the real world talking to people. I'm just in rest mode, and I can't stand that. I fucking hate it. So that's why I end up drawing and doing things to fill that time. Do you have that well, there is a word for it, isn't it? The procrastination.
The need for downtime, or the need to be introvert. For a short time.
Yes, definitely. In fact, if I was forced to align myself one way, I'd say I'm an introverted person. I find social situations and performances and things like that very draining to me. They take a lot of my energy away, and I have to go away and recover. And that's true for just hanging out with people, or going down a pub, or festivals, or my job, which is performing. But it turns out that what I'm good at and what makes me feel alive, which is performing and entertaining, also is something that takes a lot from me in the process. It doesn't energize me. And so my life is sort of a constant cycle of massive outpourings of energy, and then either crippling depressions or just downtime where I have to go lie in a box, or just not see anyone, or be very, very quiet, in order to get back that energy and also prepare for the next time. And the bigger the outpouring of energy, the bigger the crash afterwards, or rather the bigger the need for a recharge. So back when the world was a bit more normal, there would be big obstacle course races. And one of the things I do is I run these courses, or sometimes I just pretend to run them. But for the sake of entertaining the people who are running it and who are suffering, if it's particularly cold or hard, to entertain them, sing them a song, or throw them a beer or something. And sometimes on a big year, I'll be the focal point for 6,000 people about to charge into the hardest race of their life. And I mean, it seems sort of hippie to talk about it, but there is a massive exchange of energy that goes on in that situation. People take a lot of your energy away and you take a lot back. It's very cyclical. But afterwards, inevitably, there's a massive crash where I realize that I've got none left. All the energy I'd stored up from previously, or all the energy I picked up on the day, comes out of me, and then I'm just burned out. So yeah, the funny thing about me, I guess, or anyone in my position, is that people only see us when we're out there and when we're performing. So they're like, whoa, you're just always on it, you're always up, like you're really positive and upbeat and like this unstoppable force of energy, because obviously you don't make an Instagram video of you lying under the duvet just like eating Cheetos and being like, no, I can't face another day. And even if you're doing an event every freaking weekend, that's still 6 other days of time that is spent training for the event or training yourself, or generally trying to get through the downtime. So yeah, man, I relate to that entirely, and I think that's a lot more of my life than anyone really realizes. But it's very much worth it. That's why all the things I've written, all the books and things, are ways I can fill the downtime creatively without feeling particularly drained. I can get exactly like your art, I would imagine. You can sit quietly, not have to express yourself or involve any kind of energy exchange with another person, and still manage to express yourself in an artistic way. So that's where the books come into it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed your books, as you know. The can't remember the bloody name. What was it?
It's a catchy title.
The Adventures.
Yep.
Of Man Smooth.
The Adventures of Man Smooth.
That was very close. It's the Sexy Adventures of Stan Booth, by award-winning erotic author Man Smooth, which is my pen name.
So yeah, I mean, for people that haven't gone out and read that, it's bloody amazing. And
thank you.
So one of my favorite pastimes in the past was, like, especially when I'd meet up with my friend Hannah, we would go and sit in cafes and shout out parts of the book, like read it out aloud, and we just have the most amazing responses, because it was usually a 50-50 split of some people coming closer to hear it and other people like, shame, disgusting, filth, and just storming off.
Thus the guild. I mean, people ask what the guild is, and it's much easier to just tell through examples. Like that thus the guild. Are you gonna, half the people in the room are gonna immediately despise you and maybe put out a warrant for your arrest, but the others, they're gonna love it. They're gonna come over, they're gonna join in, and you'll be like, good, now we're all better for this.
Yeah.
So I guess a gain overall. But I'm glad to hear it has brought mirth to random strangers.
Yeah, and as you know, I made a point of buying 10 copies and then giving a copy to some of my favourite people so they can pass them on, hopefully through the world as well.
Yes.
To pass on this idea.
Down through their families, I hope.
Yeah, we'll see. So I think that something else that's sort of related to what we're talking about is, so when it comes to art, and me and Brock doing what we do, we're talking about this whole thing about what we do in our downtime. I know that you certainly spend a lot of time as well, Brock, drawing and preparing for when it does come to that time on, in the studio, when you were confronted with a human being that you were going to draw on for the rest of their lives. So it's all about the training of getting to that point of, sort of whittling out ideas and, testing things out on the paper and so on, or iPad, should we say, before it comes to it. And this is also as well what you do, Ed, isn't it, with your training? Because basically what I'm trying to say is, even though I'm going to pass it over to you, is that things don't come straight away. You've got to bloody work at stuff if you want to have a result.
Oh yeah, like without a shadow of a doubt. Like obviously everyone has their natural talents, right? But if you ever actually want to be great at something, you're gonna have to work for it. I mean, one of my favorite little bits from a documentary called Rise of the Sufferfests, which was made about the meteoric rise of obstacle course racing, which went from a very niche, bizarre thing that no one really did to being the fastest growing sport on the planet, and then the biggest running sport on the planet within like 3 years. And there's this wonderful bit in it where they talk to Laird Hamilton, who is this very well-known big wave surfer, and he talks about the experience of riding these colossal waves and how it's one of the biggest highs and biggest thrills that a human being can possibly experience is being on top of like 100-foot wave, like surfing on it, right? That's a thrill that very, very few people will ever experience. He only gets to experience it because he has hardened his body and his mind through arduous processes to the point where he can be chucked off a wave like that and maybe survive because of his ability to, hold his breath underwater, the condition of his body, and so on. And it's just the perfect illustration of, if you want to experience the absolute highest points of being trapped inside this body, you need to teach the body and the brain that you've been given to endure all the other stuff in order to propel you to that. Like, I'm never going to know what it's like to stand on top of Mount Everest, I mean, let's assume, or ride a massive wave, because I haven't taken the time to develop that skill and that hardness. And that goes exactly for, like, if you're never going to know what it's like to be able to competently and calmly ink another person for the rest of their life with beautiful artwork that you've planned and comes straight out of your brain, if you never take the time to overcome that crippling fear of what if you mess up, the agonies of artistic creation where you just think that you're shit 15,000 times a day, and all the other stuff. And I think that basically this is why I always say strength is the cornerstone. You were talking earlier about how honor plays a big part in all of this, and I think that they're very similar. That strength these days manifests as the ability to harden up and overcome fear and all the constant nagging questions and doubts that most people go through every single day, but a certain proportion of us face those things down and overcome them, and because of that we sort of level up and then can achieve things that other people can't achieve. And that's everything. That's everyone who runs a marathon. That's everyone who runs an ultra marathon. Everyone who actually puts their artwork out there for other people to criticize. The only difference between us and them, or them and us, is we actually did it and it sucked, and then we did it again, and then we carried on doing it. So man, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you have the courage and the talent to sit there and on a daily basis as well and create artwork on other people's skins. That lasts forever, and it always looks fantastic, and I think that's incredible, because that's something I think all my stuff is transient, man. Like, if I screw up, it doesn't matter. In fact, a lot of the time I think me screwing up is what people enjoy seeing most, whereas you guys, what you do actually carry some weight, so that's amazing.
Oof. Well, I don't know.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I think one of the things on that sort of train of thought, like people always say, like, oh, I wish I could play the violin, and it's sort of like, well, you just can't yet. You can't yet play the violin. But there's so much stuff I want to do. I want to play all the instruments and learn all the languages, but I'm only gonna live once, like, and that's utterly terrifying. And I think there is a tendency to, like, freeze up in that sort of decision making process about, like, actually, what am I going to spend my one life mastering?
Yeah.
Becoming a master of. And I think a lot of people will just, like, freeze up at that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. That's for any I don't know what the right word is. I'm going to say awakened. No, that sounds pretentious. I don't mean it like that. For anyone who is honest with themselves, I think that is probably the single biggest obstacle in your entire life, is when you realize you could do anything. There's no difference between you and the person who can run 100 meters in 9.6 seconds. I mean, obviously there's some things that make the difference between the person being the top in the entire world and the person being in the top 0.01% or whatever. But the point is, for most things, you could do them. And you've just chosen not to. And dealing with that every single day, where you're like, all the things I'm not doing are because I've chosen not to do them. I'm perfectly free to do them, and I haven't done. That's probably the biggest challenge. And like you say, trying to then, in the wake of that realization that you are ultimately free to do anything you want to do, then trying to decide what the hell you want to do is basically, I think it is impossible. I think people only manage to choose when restrictions are placed on them from the outside, where you suddenly realize, well, now I can't do this and I can't do that, so my options have been narrowed. It's much easier to then make a choice. Because
Absolutely.
when you're confronted with the infinite fucking cosmos of anything that's possible, then you just freeze up. Anyone would. I haven't yet worked out how to do it. It bugs me every single day. What the fuck am I doing with my life? So a lot of the time, I just end up doing whatever comes along. Someone's like, "Do you want to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, fine, whatever," because I need something because I'm going to die. And if you leave me to my own, I'm just going to sit in this room and wait. So I look like
Yeah.
I am pretty proactive these days because I realise it just doesn't matter because even if I do the wrong thing and fuck it up completely, probably I'll work that out partway along the line and come up with something good out the other end anyway. And if I don't, I'm gonna die. So better to have spent my life doing the complete wrong fucking thing and then die than spend my life doing nothing at all and then die. As far as I can tell, as long as the wrong thing isn't killing.
I think being able to like make mistakes is quite important. Being willing and able to make mistakes. Like
Absolutely.
I don't think in my artwork I am willing enough to make mistakes. Like when I'm sat down at home with the iPad, I am a little bit of a perfectionist. Whereas actually, if I just allowed myself to make more mistakes and leave them and
Yeah.
make more and more mistakes, then eventually I might make less.
Yeah.
I yeah, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing is like, say, when it comes to, we're talking about like the fact that usually we draw on an iPad because it's really wonderful compared to other mediums because you have everything there at your disposal and you can travel with it and whatever if you have one. But even so, like when I do it, like even just on an iPad, like when I go back to drawing and realism, which I used to do a lot. I did bloody 9 years of artistic training, whatever, in college and university and things, and now I've hyper specialized on what I do, and now I'm bloody terrified to be drawing in realism and things, and I really really have to push myself to do that, to get back to it. But I think that what's wonderful about what we're saying though is that like that as humans we do have that capability to mimic each other to a degree, to be able to at least partway do what other people can do as well, in that sense of abilities. Again, it's just if you can jump out and do that. I mean,
Of
something
course.
that was actually very difficult for me a long time ago, and I think this is relevant for what you said before, is I actually found it very hard to almost chill out on my what I saw as my destiny with my career and all that, to push that forward, to actually start to like have fun again, and to see
Yeah.
people in a sort of social sense of just having a laugh and letting go, and not just constantly discussing things that I see that are super relevant to that journey that I've put myself on. And on that, I've that also took a lot of training to let go of just being like, hey, let's talk about Nordic art. It went through a whole thing of and then it's like, after that, hey, let's talk about Celtic art. What do you think about the Swilly Boys? There's chickens and everything, chickens, and and then it's really important to be able to drop those hyper focuses, to be able to just come back to the real world. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, of course it is
which
because the modern world is so fucking distracting. And so
yes,
if you don't hyper focus, a lot of the time you don't get anything done. So
yeah,
we learn, I think, behaviorally that good things happen when we hyper focus and bad things happen when we get distracted. So it's almost like unlearning a good habit, to drop the hyper focus, to chill out, because actually you've cultivated a very disciplined mind because you've worked out how you get shit done. But yeah, the downside is it makes it difficult to then relax, and then you go a bit bonkers, and then you start making art with your own blood.
absolutely,
I'm really, really passionate about mistake making because I feel like doing things that you're not confident doing and therefore making mistakes is basically the ultimate, especially when it matters to you, is that the ultimate form of vulnerability is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And I really believe that vulnerability is the cornerstone of strength. That's how progress is made. That's how you learn to overcome things. I think that if you never feel vulnerable and if you never confront your own vulnerability, you don't get stronger. Um, and I think that there's an irony in that because I think that the modern world perceives vulnerability as a bad thing, especially in men. We're not meant to come across as vulnerable. We're meant to come across as kind of stable and people say strong. Like, you're meant to, as a man, you're meant to be strong. And in fact, that's nonsense, because a lot of the time what is perceived as strong is basically weakness packaged up in this really bizarre concept where strength involves not having emotions or not responding to things or not ever allowing like vulnerability or weakness to become a motivating factor to you. And I think that's really, really twisted, because I think all the strongest people I know are strong because they have allowed themselves to be vulnerable repeatedly and overcome it. And that's what mistake making is. And that's how we make progress in anything, whether it's the artwork that you guys draw and then put on people's skin, or whether it's my ability to pick a big stone off the ground, is because time and time again we've confronted the terror and the vulnerability, and we've squared up to it, we've been strong, we've overcome it. Whereas a lot of the time people who are more traditionally strong, they're only perceived that way because they refuse to put themselves in situations where they don't feel strong, and so they look strong all the time because they're always operating at 50% of what they're capable of doing. So anyone looks strong when they're just flapping around, because they're never gonna find themselves struggling.
Yeah.
I think
strength is in the struggle, man.
I think to build muscle, you have to make little tiny micro tears in your muscle, right? And then you have to rest. And you have to gently weep as you walk downstairs after squats day. And you have to have that sort of pain in your life and the vulnerability to then build the strength.
You also have to have like a crippling pain in your wrists every day to have a tattoo career.
Popping Tylenol.
Well, for sure. Like, kind of like Sean was saying earlier about how people pursue money and happiness and things, instead of, say, honor or glory or whatever it might be. And I've always found that weird, because as someone who people find it weird when I say this, I'm not a naturally happy person. Like, happiness is something I have to cultivate and really work at. Like, left to my own devices, I'm not a naturally happy dude.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And it surprises people, because people assume that I am, but they assume that I am because I present happiness, because I have to fucking work at it. So I seem happier because I'm constantly in the process of trying to reinvent happiness for myself. But I don't think happiness is a thing to pursue. I think it's a weird, bizarre fallacy that people have got into their heads that happiness is, like, the meaning of life is to try and be happy. Like, as far as I can tell, as just an idiot over here, like, happiness is a side effect. It comes from being involved in meaningful things, of feeling like your life has purpose and that you're going places and you're loved and that you're valued. These things make you happy. If you can just pump happiness into yourself for no particular reason whatsoever, as far as I can tell, that's a catastrophic failure. So I don't think happiness is something that people should necessarily pursue. And I think that the more time you sort of spend metaphorically hobbling downstairs because your legs don't work, because you're in the process of actually doing something, like, that's a life worth living, not just aimlessly bumbling simply through life, like overflowing with meaningless, foundationless happiness. But I'm pretty sure that seems to be what people think would be good, just to be pointlessly happy all the time.
I do think it's scary, like, how people see happiness as, like, the end goal. And, like, it's reached the point where that idea is so pervasive that people are, like, paying, like, thousands of pounds to just sit and take 2 Instagram photos on a jet plane and pretend they have a private jet, as though they are happy.
Yeah.
And that is
the fact that, like, if someone paid £2,000 to just inject themselves with happiness for 2 hours, that would seem ridiculous. So to pay £2,000 to look like you are happy when you're not even happy is it's mind blowing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think you can prove this. I think that this isn't even theory. You can prove it very easily, without being morbid. But I'm sure you can go to, like, an old people's home, and you can find someone who's in there who is absolutely just happy, just content, away with the fairies, no real idea what's going on, but very, very happy. And if you look at that person, you're like, is that what you want for yourself? Is that person flourishing? Is this eudaimonia? Is this a human being at the apex of what it's capable of? And you'd be like, no, actually, Gladys, like, no, this is not what we're going for. And in that moment, you're like, there you go. So happy is not about happiness, is it? What is it about? And then you can have a conversation. But Most people, like Brock says, it's not even about pursuing happiness. It's about pursuing the appearance of happiness to apparently just make other people feel a little bit worse.
Yeah. Well, on that note, like, so I made a post in the last few days on Instagram. Like, I think I've finally managed to
Oh, well done.
go through today, because Instagram has bloody changed in a way that I couldn't actually figure out how to make a post for a while. They put a new setting in it that you know, I think inspired by TikTok, that you just go through a reel and just watch little, 15-second snippets of things.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm a boomer. I haven't gotten TikTok, so this is the first time that I've witnessed this. So I watched it for a bit, and I had a bit of a curious look through, and there was just lots of videos of. I mean, I've got to say, I really enjoy the animal ones. Like little puppies falling over. I kind of like that. I like that shit. But when it's just people doing things, like usually on holiday. Actually doing things, and I'm guessing the concept is that you sit on your phone and you watch people doing things whilst you are just it's morbidly curious, isn't it? But I think that what that's highlighting is that what people want to be doing, really, through their imagination, is they are reliving those things, because people ultimately want to be doing something, and to be doing things, and to be and what I'm getting to, and I don't think I put it in a very eloquent way, but I think that people should just be doing things, really, so they have stories to tell. So when they see each other, when people see other people, they have something to talk about more than anything.
Yeah.
So you said about the whole thing about hobbling down the stairs after leg day, whatever, and just feel like with a tear in your eye. Then you got something to tell someone. You're like, oh, I was absolutely crippled today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not. I don't think it's even necessarily that it's always about telling stories for the sake of stories, like for just having something to say. I'm pretty sure in studies into happiness, and don't ask me the details of this because right now I could not tell you, but I think what they found is that people are less happy in the moment than they are when they reflect upon the moment at a later date. And this is especially the case when it comes to things like climbing mountains, running marathons, shit like that. If you ask people at the time to rate their happiness, they're like, I hate this. This is awful. I want to die. But then when you ask them to talk about how happy they were at that moment a year down the line, they'll tell you, oh, I loved it. I loved every minute. Their reports of their happiness are much, much higher later on. And that's just how I think episodic memory works.
Are you saying that we're all going to look back at lockdown with really fond memories?
I guarantee people are like, oh, do you remember when we just had all that time to ourselves? Oh. But this is what happens. So, like, human beings, like the way that our brains are put together, they're put together to we get more pleasure out of life when we are reflecting on it, like when we're reliving it with other people, when we're retelling it. And that's why stories work, and that's why freaking tattoos work the way they do. Why a lot of everything we do is because it is reflective about. It's about we're talking about principles. We're making art about stories, because life most of the time is pain. Existence is suffering. I think there's a lot to be said that for the fact that life probably came about to sleep, and we only ever really woke up to feed and mate, and then would go back to sleep again. Because the process of being awake is basically decay. The second you wake up, you're accruing toxins, you're being attacked, you're feeling miserable, you're doubting yourself. Everything just goes to shit until you can go back to sleep again. Thank fuck, right? That's pretty much what existence is. So expecting that process to be pleasant is madness. Like, I don't know who came up with this idea that we get thrown out into this world that is out there to destroy us. And let's be clear, the world is out there to destroy us. Like, people like to be like, oh, I love nature. I love going for a walk in nature. I'm in the woods. Oh, look at the nature. You're like, mate, the only reason you're not being eaten by wolves is because of deforestation and hunting. Like, we destroyed nature, and now what you enjoy is like this weird bubble nature that human beings have bestowed upon you. Actual nature is horrifying and will destroy you. So expecting to wander around as a small fleshy creature with very little skills in a world that has evolved to destroy it, and to think that might be a pleasurable experience, let alone like not just harrowing constantly, I think is insane. And so the fact that we feel happiness and pleasure at all is something that we should be very pleased about, and we should stop trying to manufacture it arbitrarily because it's impossible. And all that happens is we fail. We just fail. We get up every day and we fail at making ourselves happy, because being happy is very fucking difficult. And that, oh God, you said something that was relevant to, and I got carried away thinking about people being ripped apart by wolves.
Well, either way, it was certainly very enjoyable.
I think we're all just banging on at the general idea that happiness is an end goal or something we should be pursuing, rather than a side effect of doing meaningful things or having a meaningful existence. And I think that this is very clearly demonstrated in the case of depression, and in the actual treatment of depression, and in long-term case studies into what is actually effective in that. I mean, it's nonsense to be like, go for a walk in a forest and your depression will be cured, obviously, but equally it is nonsense to say take these pills and your depression will be cured, because it has been fairly comprehensively proven, as far as I'm aware, that changing the environment that is poisoning you is the best way to overcome these things. And if you are trying to flourish in an environment where you are not being nourished, you will die. And that is, from my personal experiences and the experiences of the people I've spoken to, that's where change happens. So instead of going about your life expecting to be happy and then being miserable because you keep failing to be happy, engaging in life in a meaningful way and finding things that matter to you, having people around you that care about you, doing work that you think is valuable and that you're good at, if you can get these things right and if you can make them work, it's much, much harder to come down and suffer with things like depression, because the environment is nourishing you instead of draining all your shit away. And if you don't have those things in place, really it doesn't matter how many drugs you take or how many therapy sessions you go to, because you're just being poisoned on a daily basis. And I think that one of the massive contributors to that poisoning is this idiotic idea that we should be happy all the time, and that if you're not being happy all the time, you're failing, because that just sets you up to feel like you're losing every single day because you're not happy. And that sucks. And I think that's fucking millions of us. Millions of us have been told that's like, every time we open Instagram, everyone else is happy, you're not happy, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing. And I don't care who you are. If someone's in your ear all day being like, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing, sooner or later you're going to be pretty pissed off and miserable and feel like you might be failing. So, man, that's how I think. Which is I know, it's a bit depressing, but also I think people need to confront that. It's very easy to be like, no, happiness isn't the end goal of life, to herp, and then move on. It's like, no, not just happiness isn't the end goal of life. Thinking it might be is killing everybody. We're killing them. People kill themselves because they're not happy and they think they never will be happy. Like, that's one of the leading causes of death in young men, yeah? So and they're doing it because they think they're meant to be happy all the time, because we tell them they are, and they're not. So, yeah. Be miserable. That's what I say.
I think that's one of the things people misunderstand about chasing experiences. Have we lost you, Ed?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you cut off just for a moment.
Are you back? I think one of the things people misunderstand about chasing experiences is evolutionary dread aside. Obviously, being in nature, you're listening to the noises, you're seeing everything. You become aware of your surroundings, and there is a sort of mindfulness in that. And I think there's something to be said for that. But I think lots of people will literally go into the wilderness just to take the Instagram photos. Yeah. And there's not that mindfulness. It's the hashtag nature kind of aspect of it. And that isn't helpful for your mental health. You're not doing that for your mental health. You're playing into that thing that you're talking about there of just pretending to be happy.
Definitely. Yeah. I rip on nature because I find it funny to do that, but I'm a very outdoorsy person, and I think, well, in fact I know, because I've read a lot about it and studied a lot about it, and being disconnected from your natural environment is a major contributor to feeling out of whack, and that manifests as depression, it manifests as anxiety, right? So yeah, you're totally right, and it's baffling that it's got to a point where people will deliberately go into environments that should nurture them and then only be there temporarily to make it look like they're doing well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There are people out there like sort of promoting nature as like being this cure-all for mental health, but then the way that they're doing it is saying like, go out there and then post it on Facebook.
Yep.
That's the opposite. You're doing the
Yeah,
opposite.
it's a professionally taken picture with artificial lighting of them doing a headstand in a field. And you're like, this is everything that's making me depressed, because you somehow have a camera crew and the time and the money to go into the field and do headstands and look fantastic doing it, while I'm desperately trying to claw enough money together to buy a smoothie so I don't die. Like, that's not helping me, not at all. And also, if I go to a field now and do a headstand, what's going to happen? Nothing. I'm going to fall over. I'm going to hurt myself. Yeah, I agree. I guess there's an irony of the fact that I try and spread whatever you might loosely call my message through the medium of social media. That seems ironic, but also I think all of us do a decent job of doing social media in a way that I hope is actually valuable to other people, as a little nod to be like, you're doing well.
Absolutely.
And also, look, I'm terrible at things, or here's me screwing up, or whatever it might be, just to be a small resistance of something that's fucking real in an environment that is just full of nonsense and falsity. Like, for a while I was a personal trainer.
Absolutely.
For most of my life, on and off, I've been a personal fitness trainer. And if there's one industry I despise more than anything, it's the fitness industry, because it's the same thing. It's dressed up as health and fitness and wellness, and it's not. 90% of it is not about that at all. It's about making quick money off of people by exploiting their own weaknesses. And I despise it for all the same reasons. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say, like, but with social media, I mean, that's like pretty much at the core of so many things we've been discussing, is that whole thing, especially regarding happiness and feeling of worth and so on. I definitely went through a period with it all when I started using it, because I realized it was a fantastic medium for getting my work out there, to get to do what I love. But then there was certainly a time where it felt like it was taking a hold, and it changed from being a tool that I was using to something that, I was almost just there to feed the algorithm and so on.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of us have been there.
yeah. Well, but that's the thing, though, is it's important for people that haven't heard that, is that, it doesn't have to be like that.
No.
You can take a step back from it and not let it consume you, because that, we're talking about happiness and stuff. That just eats into your happiness like nothing else. You end up hyper focusing on it, and like, that whole thing of when people like just go somewhere like, oh, I could take a nice picture here and I can post it and maybe I'll get like 20 likes or whatever, or maybe even 70. Who knows?
Cool. It'd have to be a bloody good photo.
And I get that it's wonderful when it's like it's your friends. You look into those individuals and it's like, oh, I respect these people, and the fact that they like what I'm doing, that's cool. But as soon as so there is something very real behind it all. But when it just turns into like an endless pursuit, it's like it's.
I think even with artwork, that's there, because it's sort of the whole thing of when I was an apprentice. It's like, well, I could draw something that I would enjoy drawing, that I would like to see out there in the world, or if I draw a little man with a beard and a rune next to his face, I'm probably going to get 200 likes. Like,
yes.
It's that choice of like, do I do the thing that's going to make me happy, or do I do the thing that's going to get me exposure on this little box of electricity in my pocket? And
for sure.
Always follow the authentic self, because that's how you get out of the thing of just doing what everyone else is doing. But anyhow, what I was going to say is that it's just important for people to remember that the internet is a tool, that's something you should use and respect, that it has, like, it's like a leech, It's fantastic in so many ways, but it's so bloody dangerous.
Ed, do you think, obviously there's been a lot of talk recently about sort of Facebook and Instagram being like that algorithm that is designed to suck everything out of you. Do you think that it is truly possible to turn it on its head and use it for your own gain completely? Or do you think there will always be that sort of parasitic aspect to it?
I mean, I think that probably if you can use it entirely for gain, it's a reflection of your own mental state being that strong from the outset. So what I mean by that is, so the way that I use Instagram now is quite selfish, because I've realized, like you say, it's a tool. I mean, would I use a pen if every time I wrote anything it kept saying you're shit, you're shit, you're shit at me every time I wrote? No, you're a terrible tool, right? Or like every time I wrote, no, you spelled that wrong. Oh, someone else wrote this better yesterday. Oh, that's a useless tool to me, right? So these days, to get around that, when I use Instagram, I basically don't use it at all. And when I have something I want to say, which over lockdown has been infrequently, I'll pick it up, I'll hit new post, I'll paste in what I've written in a different app on whatever the picture is. I'll hit go, and then I'll put it away. And I'll open it at the end of the day and see who's commented on it, so I can reply to them and talk to people or whatever. And then it goes away again. I don't scroll on it, and I don't really check the messages on it unless it's someone that I particularly know and I see their name come up. And to that extent, I find that it only has, I guess, a positive influence on my life because it is a tool for my own exposure rather than it's not particularly parasitic. However, inevitably, because of the nature of how you use it, I get feedback, emotional feedback based on the response to whatever it is that I wrote. Or posted, and there's no way around that unless you literally don't check who's liked it or commented on it, and then you don't know. But as long as you're getting feedback about that post was popular, that one wasn't, it inevitably digs into you a little bit and makes you feel crap if people didn't really like something, or makes you feel, or more dangerously, makes you feel good when people did like something, because then that reinforces whatever it is you did, and that isn't necessarily a good thing, because what I've noticed, like Brock said about, he could draw something he really wants to draw, or draw something that's going to get more attention and likes. And what I've noticed with a lot of people, and especially in the scene in which we three exist, we basically live in cosplay, as far as I can tell, where people have realized that if they wear certain clothes and have certain tattoos and mention Odin enough times, they'll get a lot more followers and a lot more attention from people they think are cool. And so they just do this, and they pose in the mirror with a battle axe, despite the fact they've never once used an axe in their life, and they'll draw runes on their face with no idea what it means or whether it's even vaguely historically relevant. People just dress up as shit that they're not. And I'm like, it's not for me to say who is or isn't whatever, but I'm really sorry. There's killing someone with a battle axe and there's not killing someone with a battle axe. There's not a lot of grey area there. So you can't really stand there with an axe on your shoulder and talk about being a warrior when you've literally never been to war or fought anybody. At that point, you are dressing up as something else. And I'm all for dressing up as something else, but when your own identity is dressing up as something that you're not, something has fucked up somewhere, mate. And that, unfortunately, is fucking millions of us. But we've done it because we've realised that gets a reaction. Because being something gets a reaction. So instead of being something, because being something is difficult and time-consuming and painful, people just dress up as something and get the same fucking reaction. So why would you? Why would you go out there and actually fight a bear when you can just put a picture of you standing next to a bear with an axe and be like, I'm all about bear fighting, and get the same fucking reaction? So this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Now everyone will come across, like, when people talk to me and we have very conversations that mean an awful lot to me, when people say, hey man, you seem to actually do a lot and kind of be genuine, and that means a lot to me, but it's weird because they're surprised. You actually do things. Yes, I do. That's only surprising because so many people don't do fucking anything, and it's not just the fact they don't do anything, but they're always pretending that they do. And yeah, I mean, you can tell it's something that I'm confused and baffled and passionate about, but and I'm especially because it's something that we three exist in this little world, and it's weird, man. It's weird because we're surrounded by people who are basically cosplaying themselves as a different version, or as the person they want themselves to be seen as. And then, mate, you will go and meet up, and they still do it. They still wear the same stuff and speak the same way in reality. And you're like, you are aware you're not a berserker, right? You're not actually possessed by the wolf spirit, and you don't actually drink human blood. And they're like, yeah, but I am though. And that's a weird conversation.
In all ways except the physical, I am a wolf.
Well, I mean, I'm not, who am I? If you self-define as a wolf, that's fine. It's just as long as you actually do self-define as a wolf. No, don't just pretend to do it. Man.
I do sometimes feel quite torn about that because, like, I think I'm quite into the, if it makes you happy, do whatever you want. Like, if it makes you happy and it doesn't hurt anyone else, do whatever you want. So if you want to paint runes on your face and take pretty photos of yourself, then go ahead. And I think as you're sort of saying, like, that is cosplay, Ed.
Yes.
I also think, like, girls just doing the duck face and then the high angle photos, that's cosplay.
Yes.
You're cosplaying a slightly more attractive version of yourself.
In theory. In theory.
In theory.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is something that troubles me between the, like, just let people do what they enjoy, and actually, like, is this actually harming your mental health more than it's helping you? I think that's quite difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. Like people, so man, I'm not runes. Well, actually, no, I paint runes on myself. Or I'll put a bunch of face paint on, and I'll go out into a field with a flamethrower, and I'll lark about and do cosplay.
Sean's face runes are permanent.
Yeah,
So.
so you can't get rid of them. But
Have I got runes on my face?
Ear is your face.
Yeah.
see your face.
We've been having a big debate. Sorry, I'm going to cut across.
go on.
Like, if you got tattoos on your ears, does that mean you got a face tattoo?
Well, apparently.
So,
No, because I feel like a face tattoo is more than just literally a tattoo on your face. It's a concept, isn't it? It's a tattoo that's on, like, your identifying visage that's unhideable and confronts other people. Whereas your ears, I mean, my ears are tiny. You can't see them even when they're out, right? So I think in Sean's case though, because, like, your hair's shaven away, maybe they are a bit more facey because they're very up in your.
but they're head tattoos, then, aren't they? If you've got ear tattoos, they're head tattoos. You know.
No, I think they're an appendage that comes off the head.
You could just
Do you
disconnect.
have any appendage tattoos?
Yeah.
Well, talking about, like, being your own, like, authentic self, then I have a 2-part question for you, Ed.
Okay.
1, are you a muscle wizard? And 2, if so, what's your favourite spell? Well, you are a muscle wizard, so that's.
I mean,
Would Flesh Warlock also work?
I'm gonna say, I feel like if I ask for clarification on what a muscle wizard is, that would mean I'm not a muscle wizard. So I'm just gonna go ahead and agree that yes, I am a muscle wizard, undeniably and proudly. And of course, I have a favorite spell. I mean, all wizards have favorite spells. It depends whether you're asking me about my favorite muscle-based spell, or whether you're just asking me about my favorite spell that I cast whilst being muscly. Which one, or both?
I think it's a two-part. We want both.
Well, either, yeah. But first off, what's your favorite spell in the art of musclemancy?
Yes. Well, within the vast fleshy realms of musclemancy. My favourite spell to cast is it's called Stone Skin, and basically that is by committing entirely to the practice of lifting stones, you actually turn the skin of your forearms to stone. It hardens up and becomes completely impervious to the elements. You probably can't see it.
I have heard about this spell.
Yeah, it's a grower. You cast it on the first time you try and lift the stone, and then you have to ritually go and recast it whilst lifting stones. But eventually, yeah, you'll find that your skin becomes grotesquely calloused, and yeah, it's my favorite.
Because I'm only a 0.5 level muscle wizard, so I just have these tiny little ones on the palms of my hand.
Oh wow.
I've not leveled up yet to the full-on forearm calluses.
Yeah, well, that comes with time. But if you really commit to it, what you want to get to by the time you around about level, goodness, I'd say around about the early 80s, you'll find that your whole body is just one callus. You've got to be careful at that point, because once your face starts callousing up, there's not a lot of going back.
No.
You can't cast spells because your mouth becomes callous and you can't speak, and then you can't cast the muscle spells to undo what you've done.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, you need to have an accomplice with an emery board that basically just comes
An
and
apprentice.
that files you down if you become too callous. They just they just file
There's the pummel stone.
all the gross stuff away. Yeah, so beware if you're going to get into muscle wizardry.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, since you just asked Ed the question, I'm going to ask you because Brock is a skin poet, you see,
Oh,
as a tattooist. So, Brock, what's your favourite spell or your favourite rhyme to sing upon the flesh? Does that sound creepy enough? Can I word it in a more?
Okay, I think my favorite spell would be up and down and round in a whirl. I gently cast the elbow swirl, and then an elbow swirl appears on their arm. I think that's the elbow swirl is my favorite spell.
Yeah,
Definitely.
the elbow swirly guy.
Except other than dot.
oh man, your spell was so much better than mine. Mine just had a name. I've never actually. I didn't want to utter the spell right now because I feel like I might accidentally callous myself. So, by uttering that spell out of context, have you ruffled the ether? What's going to happen?
Well, it's wild magic now. It wasn't really directed
Oh,
anywhere, so
no.
it could have gone anywhere.
There might be a child somewhere that just got tattooed.
I was going to say I want to check my own elbows just in case.
Someone at Londis has just experienced a bit of funny bone pain.
Just fall into the ground.
Oh, it's out there now. Maybe it will get the listeners.
Might ricochet.
Well, you know what? I think this has gone on for quite a while. So I think for the sake of the general public, I think we should probably call it a day there.
For the sake of Duncan's sanity.
Yeah.
Oh God, poor Duncan.
So
Sorry, Duncan.
Yeah. Duncan is the wizard that's going to be editing our random mumblings together, you see. So, yeah, I reckon. We'll just leave it there. Thanks, Duncan. You are a legend.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Can you make sure you put some real booming echo on my voice? I want to sound like I'm in a cave. But not a comfortable cave, like real low on furnishings.
We're going to put reverse reverb on you so that you sound like you're talking backwards somehow.
Oh, I see.
Really make people work for this one.
It wouldn't even come out of itself.
You'd sound like you're in a box for the whole thing, I guess.
The box of Barry. All right, Ed.